talk about something great. Something great. Before we get to Ned Ryun, and in fact, I'm going to ask him about some of this, the government shutdown continues. And it looks like right now it's going to continue for quite some time. How long? I don't know. I say that it could end tomorrow, but the thing is, right now the GOP is starting to get some things they want. Democrats don't appear to be gaining much ground on this, and they're not gaining any ground politically. The polls are showing that Democrats are in fact losing ground. The American people are correctly blaming Democrats for the continued shutdown. Okay, so wouldn't it make sense if you're an elected Democrat, just open the government back up? If it's a losing issue for you, get off that issue and move on. But Democrats have all kinds of losing issues right now, and they are held hostage by their base and cannot move on. In fact, this is something I talked about a bit in the opening, but this is a little bit of a different way. Their base is demanding. The rabid animals that make up the Democrat base, they are demanding a win of some kind. Get Trump, get us something, give us something. They're demanding it. But as long as the polls continue the way they are, Republicans just have precious little incentive to actually give them anything. It's got to be a hard life right now being a Democrat politician, and doesn't that feel good to say that? So, where are we at? Here's Mr. President.
Russell Vought said the reductions in force have begun related to this shutdown. How many layoffs have you authorized for this first round, and from which agencies?
And it'll be Democrat-oriented, because we figure, they started this thing, so they should be Democrat-oriented. It'll be a lot, and we'll announce the numbers over the next couple of days, but it'll be a lot of people, all because of the Democrats.
Okay. Well, it hasn't been a lot so far, to be fair. It's been 4,000. Remember, the federal government is, and I can't even believe I'm going to say this. I just can't even believe this is where we are. The United States federal government is the largest employer in the United States of America. If you had told the founders that one day their limited federal government would be the largest employer, they would have just handed the country back to the British. Be that as it may, it's the largest employer in the United States of America. And so 4,000 people is not a lot. It's a pimple on an elephant's butt. It's not a lot. It's probably a shot across the bow. J.D. Vance says more coming.
The longer it goes on, Maria, the more significant they're going to be. If you remember, we went 9 days before announcing any significant layoffs. Again, the President of the United States wanted to reopen the government. He was trying to work with Democrats in order to make that happen. But the longer this goes on, the deeper the cuts are going to be. And Maria, to be clear, some of these cuts are going to be painful. This is not a situation that we relish. This is not something that we're looking forward to. But the Democrats have dealt us a pretty difficult set of cards. We're trying to do the best that we can with the shutdown situation that Chuck Schumer has left us.
All right. Let's be clear about this. J.D. Vance loves cutting government jobs. That is the public line they have chosen to go with. He's just messaging there. J.D. Vance, I promise you, is not sitting at home crying because some dirtball federal bureaucrats got fired. That's the kind of message you have to say. Hey, we don't want to do it, but you're forcing my hand. So that's where we're at. Now, the Democrats were at least partially banking on one thing: the troops. You know as well as I do, the Democrat Party, they're not un-American. They are anti-American. It has become the party that thinks America sucks. Their base thinks America sucks. They campaign on it all the time. This is what they believe. Sorry, your dad's Democrat Party's gone. But they also know you can't advertise that. And when necessary, you have to talk about the troops. And during a shutdown, the troops don't get paid. Looks like Donald Trump found a loophole which is going to allow him to get the troops paid, which brings us right back to the bind Democrats are currently in. If the troops are getting paid and government bureaucrats are getting fired, why would Republicans come to the negotiating table? Chuck Schumer keeps throwing hissy fits.
So now we're in a government shutdown. And you may be asking yourself, how the hell did we get here? Donald Trump and the Republican Party are hell-bent on taking health care away from 60 million people. closing community clinics, rural hospitals, nursing homes, all so they can keep giving tax breaks to their billionaire friends. It's a disgrace. So Democrats have 3 words for this: no fucking way. It's literally life or death.
Of course, he had to throw in the cuss word there. This is something Democrats do all the time now. It drives me crazy, but had to throw in the cuss word there. They're in trouble. I am loving every second of it. We don't have many times in politics where you and I get to sit back and smile and enjoy, but this is one of those times. I guess we shall see where it goes.
Why are these firings necessary?
Well, I just think it shows the different priorities of Democrats and Republicans in the midst of these shutdowns. You really have to ask yourself, who do we care more about? Federal bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., or low-income women getting the food benefits they deserve, our troops getting the payment they need, flood insurance across the Southeast in the midst of hurricane season?
But laying people off is a priority?
We have to lay off some federal workers. Kristen, if you would let me finish. We have to lay off some federal workers in the midst of this shutdown to preserve the essential benefits for the American people that the government does provide. So we don't want to be in this situation. We don't want to be laying off federal workers, but the Democrats have shut down the government. They have forced us to choose between American citizens and federal bureaucrats. We're choosing the benefits, the critical services that benefit our American citizens.
Well, I mean, JD's going to have to speak for himself there. I understand why he has to message it, but I want to lay off federal workers, like millions of them. Joining me now, my buddy Ned Ryun, CEO of American Majority. All right, Ned, all joking aside and the complete elimination of entire agencies aside, which is what I want, can you explain, nerd out for us for a moment, why does it take a shutdown to finally fire some of these career leeches?
Well, I think they're taking the opportunity that's been afforded them, Jesse, and it's Democrats that have served up this opportunity. I'm in total agreement with you. They fired 4,000 federal bureaucrats in the last couple of days. That number's missing a few zeros. 40,000 doesn't even make me happy. 400,000, now we're starting to talk. And I understand how JD's having to message this. I get it. Great, whatever. The fact of the matter is the federal bureaucrats are part of the administrative state. And I want to make this point for those listening. The administrative state is a backstop for Democrats when they lose elections to actually preserve Democrats' agenda. And so really what we're trying to do is remove that backstop from Democrats by devolving the administrative state, breaking it apart, and actually returning us back to a representative government so that elections do have real consequences, that we're not just elections come and go, presidential administrations come and go, and the state remains, and these bureaucrats remain to actually be the ones making the decisions and doing the real governing. So I appreciate the opportunity we have, and I hope that Trump really unleashes Russ Vought, who's head of OMB, to go well above and beyond 4,000.
Ned, before we get to Russ and well above and beyond, can you explain, as the man responsible for American Leviathan, which was wonderful, by the way, can you explain how the federal government, how the bureaucracy serves as a backstop for when Democrats lose an election? What's that mean?
Because this is what was put in place 100 years ago with the rise of the administrative state, that the progressives really envisioned an educated elite, this ruling class, these bureaucrats, being separated out from politics, in which they thought politics was the corrupting force. They had to be separated out from it, and they had to be the ones doing the real governing and the real decision-making, using applied science to make better decisions for the American people, to lead to greater progress, to lead us to an enlightened state, to the end of history. And so what has always been envisioned over the last 100 years, and I think it's becoming more and more apparent to the American people, who's doing the real decision-making, who's doing the real governing, it really was an attempt to remove politics out of the real governing of America, so that elections really didn't have the consequences that they should have. And then the power, the real power, was to rest in the hands of these educated elite, these unelected bureaucrats. That was what was always envisioned, Jesse. And really, when you realize Democrats are aligned and allied with this administrative state bureaucracy, Democrats don't always have to win elections, because until we actually dismantle this bureaucracy, a lot of the decisions made by these bureaucrats are simpatico with the Democratic Party today.
Which brings me to where we are right now, Ned. I like Russ Vought a lot. He's very capable. He knows exactly what needs to be done. But as of this point in time, we're talking, 4,000 workers have been fired? That's about 1.5 million short. How do we increase that number?
Well, it's one of those things that Trump has to unleash him. And the other thing, too, that I got to tell you, Jesse, that's become very apparent. You and I know this, but it's becoming even more apparent. We've seen the enemy, and the enemy is us. And it's red state senators that have really started to throw some roadblocks in the way of Trump making decisions in August through the end of the fiscal year and making some of the dramatic cuts that need to be made. And these red state senators who apparently don't have a backbone, don't have any guts or the moral fortitude to actually do what's necessary to restore representative government are really throwing a monkey wrench and trying to hit those brakes on what the Trump administration really does want to do. I will say this. I think Trump is going to give Russ more freedom to continue down this path, because you're right. 4,000 to me is like a rounding error. The federal government, of its own volition, outside of Trump, outside of Russ, has already deemed that there are 800,000 non-essential federal government employees. So when we say 4,000 is not the right number, 400,000 is more like it, I still think the real number is 800,000. And even more importantly, Jesse, those that remain need to be placed under the authority of our duly elected representatives. And that's not the case right now.
Okay. How do we make that the case, Ned? What is this? Is this an executive order? Is this a law? We have got to bring the administrative state to heel. I know I'm preaching to the choir. This is your baby here, right. But how do we bring it to heel? Let's assume we've only got 3 more years. You never know what life's going to happen in politics. How do we bring them to heel?
So a couple things. I still think there needs to be a case that goes all the way to the Supreme Court in which the Trump administration pushes the envelope and says, and most of the administrative state, for those listening, I want to remind them, most of this administrative state resides inside the Article 2 branch, the executive branch, of which the duly elected president is the head of it. And I want them to push a case to the Supreme Court to make a very definitive case in which they argue that the head of the executive branch, Donald Trump, has the ability to hire and fire whomever he pleases inside of the Article 2 executive branch, and push that to the Supreme Court and say, ultimately, it's up to whoever the president wants to have on his team inside the executive branch. And if they agree with him, if we can get that case, it'll probably take 18 months to 2 years, so we don't have a whole lot of time. Get it to the Supreme Court, and they make the decision on behalf of Donald Trump and saying the executive has this power, then he becomes the demolition man. So I know that Russ has got a couple things that he's working on right now, but that to me is the definitive case. If we can get that to take place, Trump can start to fire hundreds of thousands of employees inside the executive branch. And even more so, Jesse, we have to literally implode buildings. After you're doing the firing, implode the Department of Education, HUD, all of these things, raise them to the ground so that it becomes even harder. Because I'm fully aware that we will not always have political power. We have to make their comeback path that much harder.
Yes. I haven't been in D.C. in ages. If we start raising buildings to the ground, I'm just going to go get an apartment there or something like that. That's just wonderful. All right, Ned, this shutdown, I know I'm going to ask you to be Nostradamus here, but I can't help but think back to, well, my entire 44 years on the planet watching Republicans cave and cave and cave and cave. I know we haven't seen anything like this yet, but it's hard to not think we're going to cave and give them something to end it. Am I wrong?
I think in this situation, Jesse, I hope that you and I are both wrong, because you and I both have the same opinion, that given the chance to snatch victory, defeat from the jaws of victory, Republicans will do it almost every time. I think in this situation, though, the Trump administration, because they know it's at stake. I mean, this really is about, well, there's a couple different things, but the real important one is Democrats want to pay for health care for the illegal aliens, because they view them as they view them as their power demographic. I want to remind people, this is about politics. This is about political power. This is about Democrats trying to take care of the illegal aliens that are already bringing them political power by including them in census. That obviously is apportionment of electoral votes and House seats, but also almost $3 trillion of federal funding was decided off the corrupt 2020 census number. So they want to keep the illegal aliens here, give them more social welfare benefits in hopes that somehow they can figure out how to political power in 2030 and include the illegal aliens in the count again to continue building on their political power. So I think Trump is going to hold firm. I think what they were able to do by paying the military and arranging for military to not be furloughed and not be able to have their pay pushed, I think that's removed one of the pressure points. I can see this going on for a few more weeks, and ultimately at the end of the day, I don't think Trump's going to cave. And Trump is giving Republicans a backbone. I'm optimistic that we're going to win this one, and it's going to be Democrats that are caving. on this issue, but they are fighting tooth and nail because they realize this is ultimately about trying to keep that power base of illegal aliens taken care of to lead to more political power for Democrats. So they realize this is existential for their political power. They also realize, I want to make this last point, Jesse, this is also about making sure that the Chuck Schumers of the world and other establishment folks aren't primaried in 2026 because progressives are demanding this of them. So Chuck Schumer and these guys are kind of in a box. I think they're between a rock and a hard place, and I'm not sure there's an easy way out for them.
All right. Let's shift gears and go a little bit more local here. Virginia. I would love Virginia to be a red state. It is purple at best. We have a gubernatorial race coming up, an AG race coming up. It's gotten all kinds of spicy. What could we be looking at here?
Well, a couple of things that need to be done, Jesse. First of all, in the long term, the reason that this is a purple state is there's about 250,000 more model Democrats and Republicans. We don't do partisan registration here. And there's about 339,000 more absentee ballot requests from model Democrats and Republicans. So the numbers are rigged against Republicans inside the state. However, Jay Jones and his text have given us an opportunity. I'd be shocked if Jason Miyares doesn't hold on as Attorney General. You can see the poll numbers too tightening up at the Lieutenant Governor and gubernatorial race as well. You know, American Majority Action, or C4, we've been involved since June, actually before June, in 15 key House of Delegate races here. So if you were to ask me, it's 3 weeks from tomorrow where I think we would end up in Virginia. I think Miyares holds on. I think it's going to be very, very close with the governor and lieutenant governor's race, but I'm quietly optimistic we can pick up the majority again in the House of Delegates, pick up 2 seats, and hold on to the other close ones. And that, to me, right now, because the numbers are so bad for us here in Virginia, I'd be okay with those results.
I'll take it. Ned, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.